The number of people who attended a Sunday service, say at 11 o'clock, which was the only service at the time, was down to about 25 or 30 people at the most. And we never saw more than that, even on Christmas time. The Saturday morning Bible study was something that was a new idea. So it was nice that we had a small group and we talked about different things. And I happened to be seated next to Trevor. I'd never met him before. But when it became time for Trevor to speak, I was so impressed with him. I was sitting back in my chair and wondering, who is this man and why I'd like to get to know him better. I had been married before. I had lost my wife early on in our marriage, and we never had any children. But I sat back and thought, my God, if this young man had been my son, I'd have been very, very pleased and very proud to hear him speaking the way he was. And I had met Trevor on several occasions afterwards, and we became good friends.
He spoke with a self-confidence, a peace, and a kind of knowing character that even though he was the oldest person there that morning by a pretty wide margin, he seemed in that moment much more relatable actually than a lot of the other folks. That was a timeless moment for me because it was so important for me developing, one of the greatest friendships I've ever had in my entire life. Because we had a familial bond, I treated Nils the way that anyone would treat their grandfather. All right, I'm in a relationship with a new woman, and I think she's a good one, so I'm gonna let Nils meet her.
We met at our community group. It was meeting in the Upper East Side. I think at that point you were 24 or 25 years old. And what does a young single man in New York City, I was 28 at the time, know about serious relationships? So I had kind of taken it a bit lightly. But it wasn't until I met Nils and seen that there is a relationship with this 89-year-old gentleman, and such a close one at that. They were beyond friends. They were, at that time, to me, almost brothers. And I just thought that was incredibly weird, but also really interesting. And so if someone could be so be interested in each other in that way, there has to be more depth. It seemed like I needed to pass muster through Nils, but Trevor passed muster through Nils for me. So I guess we're married because of Nils. I had not grown up with any grandparents. So whether Nils liked it or not, at some point I just said, "You're my grandfather." And when he did ask us to be his grandchildren, I mean, that was just an incredibly moving moment, because you can be, through the church, through Christ, be family in love, not just by blood.
And the way we interact with Nils is unconventional in society, but it is something I saw replicated at this church many times. Not just with us. Some of them are just known around the church who live lives in these very countercultural ways where they say, you are my brother, you are my sister, you are my grandfather, you're my grandmother, I'm going to treat you like that. That means hospital visits. It means holidays and maybe the occasional holiday argument. But it does mean living life in a radically different way and creating what only the bonds of the cross and the church can do for us. And people notice. That's the crazy part about this. Friends in my network who were atheists said, you have something unique and special there.
I can remember the first Sunday that I came, the end of service every Sunday, the choir sings the Lord's Prayer, which of course I know the Lord's Prayer, but I had never heard it sung before until that Sunday. At that final note, it was literally like a wash of sound that flew over me, and I was like, whoa. And so that was a very powerful draw for me personally as a musician to continue engaging with this church and to find out more about the music ministry and then the various other ways that Central is engaging with New York City. End of 2015, beginning of 2016, Jason sent an email that just said, hey, we're looking for someone to join the staff. Do you know anybody who might be interested? And I responded, me? ultimately, they not only hired me, but 5 people in total working part-time. We were all 20-somethings at the time, and it really felt like a startup because it was all of us hunched together in that tiny 4th floor office, and it was all hands on deck. Who's sending out the email this week? Who's fielding phone calls? Who's creating the bulletin and proofing it and printing it and occasionally folding it by hand with a spoon because our finisher wasn't working? It was weird because there would be times where I was like, I have absolutely nothing left to give, but also just being part of that community and working with these people was also an energizing experience as well. So it was never I cannot walk into this building, but it was more so all right team, let's figure out how to make this work and see you on the other side. 2018, 2019, things began to pick up career-wise for me in music and performance, and so started transitioning away. And then, thank you, pandemic, all of what I was working on went down the drain, and they were looking again for a full-time office manager, which was a lot of the same role that I was doing before, but they now had a communications manager and another operations director and whatnot. So, as before, it was all of these people working part-time doing all of the ministries. In 2021, all of those roles had been separated out into different people, and people had a clear sense of this is what my task and service on staff is for Central. All of the questions of process and how do we do this again and who does this again had been streamlined and put in documents and written out, and there had been a very intentional move towards systematizing. And so I think that one just created a much more efficient work environment, but also allowed us to do so much in terms of gospel ministry and outreach and everything that we're doing, particularly as a growing congregation.
I wanted to work in finance and I wanted it to be in Manhattan. So I came and worked for the entire summer after my 3rd year of school. Started attending Central every Sunday, and I would typically go alone, and that at the time didn't bother me. I remember first being struck that summer by the very forward focus on the gospel every single Sunday, which I don't want to feel discouraged by that being a surprise. I think it's also just a beautiful thing that Central does really well. My church that I had grown up in didn't do communion every single Sunday, and so I was struck by the movement that Jason always made from sermon to the table, and very reliably. No matter what topic, if he was preaching on a topic he was discussing, no matter what passage, he could be talking about something that seems so far and removed from Jesus' life, and he would always end at the table, drawing it back to the death and the resurrection and hope of Jesus Christ. It always helped me to both take the lesson, whatever was being talked about, and then always leave just being reminded of the simple truth and most powerful truth of all, that Jesus Christ died and rose again, and we get to participate in that. And I think it's something that is representative of what we do so well, of this is a place for the gospel at the end of the day. And then when I moved the following year to start full-time, there were different aspects of Central's community and life that I was really excited to get started with. And so I went to the Bowery Mission and volunteered with the Saturday evening service and dinner. It was really powerful to me, and I met a friend there that is still one of my closest friends. We came from very different backgrounds in terms of how we thought about the church and how we approached it. I think a lot of us can look at the church and look at community groups and think that it is full of a lot of people that look the same and think the same, and that there's not room for disagreement or doubt. And I think that is one of the more beautiful things that came out of our combined time together in the same community group and our friendship of just breaking down each other's visions of Christian community. So Lauren has since moved away, which is very sad, and I miss her a lot. But I was really, really encouraged the other day because she texted me that she had gone to a Bible study at her new church. And to me, that was like, whoa, like this was sort of a challenging part for her here. And then the fact that she had built up that muscle and then was seeking after that elsewhere. Like such a beautiful picture of the way that Central is also not just a church for the people that are living in Manhattan or attending regularly, and that it is shaping and changing people that go forth and leave and go elsewhere.
The first time that I brought our new adopted children into children's church, they were checked in by Maria Long, who I had helped watch over during Sunday school 8 years prior.
To know that Jason is actively both thinking about and grappling with the current environment and culture and letting that be a part of the gospel-focused sermons that he's given every Sunday is something that is just life-giving.
Central has become so important in my life, and I guess in Trevor and Diane feel the same way about it. It's a root that we hold on to.
When you're in a small church, the participation that you can have is so vital. You literally are the hands and feet of God, and as it grows, being in the diaconate showed just how much more need you have too. So as the church filled my own needs, that's what God has shown me, that as things improve and grow, the need also improves and grows.
That is one of the more beautiful things that Central does incredibly well too, just positioning themselves outwardly to the rest of the world and making this not just a place to come and feel individually, spiritually fulfilled, but yeah, creating a place of committed believers that want to see this world redeemed and loved, trying to accomplish the Lord's work.